My journey to farming ostriches, yes, dinosaurs in the desert, began in the hills of Stellenbosch, South Africa, where I was on vacation and was invited to go wine tasting. And while there, I was very highly recommended to try an ostrich steak. A little skeptical, I ordered it, and it was delivered out on this beautiful piece of granite that had been oven heated, and they brought out this fillet, this beautiful piece of red meat, set it right on top, and as it started to cook, it was just this beautiful beefy aroma, and invited me to try my first slice, which was basically this medium rare cooked to perfection. I put it in my mouth and I was hooked. I didn't know how hooked or how much it was going to change my life at the time, but it basically led me to where I am today, raising ostriches in Ribera, New Mexico, just about an hour out of Albuquerque. I was in southern Africa, like I said, on vacation, taking some time away from Mozambique, where I lived and worked, where I was teaching people how to farm more sustainably in their homes. We had 90% of our village was subsistence farmers, and basically we were teaching them how to farm using permaculture practices and harvesting water so that it could be used as basically a way for nutritional impact in their lives to combat some of the diseases that had been affecting them locally. So really taking food security seriously and teaching people how to do that more sustainably in Mozambique was my first priority. And while running a community farm there as well, I was constantly asked, can I get a job here? Can I feed my family by providing a livelihood through your program? And I knew nothing about how to create jobs at the time, so this always struck me as something so frustrating I didn't know how to do. So came back to the United States, was working in DC for a little bit in food security, and then came back to New Mexico to work in the entrepreneurial community about how do we create jobs, how do we create economies of scale here. And the ostrich idea just kept pinging me in the back of my brain. And finally, there were three major issues that just kept striking me. Number one, from a food security perspective, this was a huge idea. And when you look at the ostrich, essentially it's so robust and so hardy, it doesn't require any inoculates. It can raise itself essentially after 3 months old, and this was a huge potential opportunity. And yet, as a food security initiative, these ostriches, if farmed in the desert, could provide a very highly nutritious, basically the meat itself is as high as nutrition with meat and beef and buffalo when you look at protein, omega-3s, vitamins, and minerals, and as low in fat, calories, and cholesterol as skinless chicken and turkey. So you have this beautiful piece of lean meat, and when looking at our insatiable appetite for meat, particularly in the developed world, we need to find some other solutions, and ostrich really provides that as a red meat product. Second thing that was super striking to me about why this would work is that when you look at the economics, I, living in a capitalist country, couldn't find it anywhere. And I was so struck by, where is the ostrich? I want this steak experience again, and I can't find it anywhere. What is going on with this? And so really was trying to figure out, why couldn't I build this business if it didn't exist? What's going on here? And third, and most important to me too, as a climate change truther, I wanted to figure out, how can we pivot into something that is more sustainable using ostrich as a platform for creating a product and using 100% of the bird. Not only do you get meat, you get leather, feathers, oil, and eggs out of the animal. And they're looking at other opportunities to look at eyeball transplants in humans and being able to raise antibodies from eggs to solve other problems with pharmaceuticals and create an opportunity to treat diseases with them. There was just endless opportunity, not to mention you could raise this bird right here in New Mexico. So I became obsessed with the idea of raising ostriches, and then took it upon myself to go and start Googling and Yelping everyone I knew that had anything to do with ostriches, and started visiting farms all around the United States asking, why is this not the biggest thing ever? What is going on? And friendly ostrich farmers everywhere told me their stories about, and maybe some of you know them, folks that had ostriches in the 80s and 90s that thought this was going to be the biggest thing ever. So people were buying up birds left and right, and they were promised that they were all going to be millionaires and everyone was going to prosper, and yet at the end of the supply chain, nobody was bringing them to market, or very few people in tiny pockets all around the United States. It never got to scale the way people were promised. In fact, I met a woman in Florida, a retired ostrich farmer, who had been farming ostrich out in Connecticut, and she bought her first two birds, her Adam and Eve, her rooster and hen, for $250,000, put a mortgage on her house in the 1980s. And on this promise that she was going to be super rich and prosper for the rest of her life. Unfortunately, she's not a retired millionaire, but she had so much knowledge to share, and farmers were just open and honest about what happened back in the 80s and 90s with the industry not taking off. Another thing that really struck me about these amazing farmers were that they were a little bit older than me. And if we look at farmers today across the United States and in New Mexico, the average age of a farmer in New Mexico is 61 years old. That's the average age. And if you look nationwide, it's 58. And as a 30-year-old, I make up less than 5% of farmers here in New Mexico today. So again, as a food security advocate, I'm going, where are we going to get our food from in the future? Not to mention, where are farmers going to be? They're taking all of this great knowledge and with them, and nobody's really picking up the torch and figuring out how we're going to do it tomorrow. So becoming a farmer myself and raising ostriches, I think it's really important to me to be part of that next generation solution for how we do it in the future. So all of these great experiences brought me to farming today, and when you look at the potential for ostrich in our future and the disruption that it can have in the way that we've degraded our environment, particularly in how we raise our meat and the meat that we consume most regularly in the marketplace today, the ostrich has incredible potential. It requires only a fraction of the land, water, feed, and overall product to create this very highly sustainable red meat. And so, and it produces only a sixth of the methane when looking at when compared to beef, when compared to the cow. So there's just so much opportunity in the way that I would like to bring this to the forefront of the future and serve you that perfect steak that I once had in South Africa.